you know the passage.
Huh?
Let me give you the passage. Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3 and verse 20. Where am I at? Where am I at? Where am I? Romans chapter 23 and verse Romans chapter 3 and verse 23. It says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So what I want you to do is to write, what I want you to do is, based on our discussion, is to write about man's free will. Man's free will. You understand? Man's free will. We have free will to choose. You know, we were talking about determination. Remember we were talking about determination?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I want you to explain, you know, what that means, and to try to explain Romans chapter 3 and verse 23. It says, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Does that mean that we never get better? Is that a justification for our mistakes? That passage? You're scratching your head.
Oh, I didn't know you were asking a question, sir.
Huh?
Oh, I didn't know you were asking a question.
No, what I'm saying is I want you to write a paper for the test.
Write on paper?
Write a paper explaining the free will.
You're gonna send the PowerPoint?
No, we already seen all of that. I just want you to do let me give you another passage then. That might be able to help you a little better. Is the other student in yet?
No, sir.
Okay. So what I want you to do is let me go to another passage then, because remember, let me go to this PowerPoint so that you get it. I think you're having a problem with it. I could tell. Okay, so I'm going to go to, okay, let me go here. And I want you, where's the passage I want to look for? Okay, let me try to share now, right? Okay, share screen. And I go here. And can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, you see where John Calvin, see that? He says he stressed the doctrine of predestination. So that's what I want you to write about, explaining whether or not we have a choice. You remember we talked about that at great length?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's what I want you to explain in the paper. Whether or not you have free will. Let me show you something else that you could probably use. You see this passage here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The story with Esau and Jacob, you can use that if you want. Okay?
Son Jacob.
Yeah. You know, he says, for the children not yet born. You see that? For the children not yet born. So I want you to take that passage and kind of explain it, because it says before they were born, you know, decision was made. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And I know you have that already. Remember I sent that to you? Here's another passage you can use in your explanation. I'm looking for Pharaoh.
So, sir,
Yes? Yes.
you want me to explain
Yes.
the verse that you gave to me, Romans 3, verse 23.
And this one here, you can also use this one too. Well, forget about Romans 3:23. Forget about that one. Use these two passages. Romans chapter 9, and I want to talk about Pharaoh. See Pharaoh? See verse 17 talks about Pharaoh. For this purpose, I raised him up. Seemed like Pharaoh didn't have a choice. You understand? So I want you to explain this. Explain this Pharaoh and Jacob and Esau's story. And then explain that within the context of free will. So I'm going to put in this passage here so you see it a little better. It says, do we have free will? That's what you're really going to be writing about. You want to prove that. Do we have free will? Yes or no? Okay? So that's the assignment. So it's Romans chapter 9, verses 15 to 21, right? And the other passage I gave you before that was the one with Esau and Jacob, right? Romans chapter 9, rather, verses 10 through 13. And it's all about free will.
10 to 13.
Yeah. Romans chapter 9, verses 10 to 13, that talks about Esau and Jacob. The one before that talks about Pharaoh, how God raised him specifically for that purpose. So the question is, some churches argue that some people are born to go to heaven and some are born to go to hell, predestination. The Baptists sometimes teach that. So you have to say that I believe that, or you have to say I don't believe that, and then you try to demonstrate this whole thing about determination. I have a class now though. Can I call you back later? Okay, so you understand the exercise now?
Not fully, sir.
Yeah, but we were studying determination. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
We were talking about whether or not we can't help ourselves because of the way we were raised and because of what's happening. You know, so our behavior is driven by the past. The question is, can we change our life? God says we can. Remember the passage I gave you? I gave you a passage and I write it here. I gave you 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 11. Remember that passage that says, Paul says to the Corinthians, such were some of you.
Yeah.
They had changed their life, but it was God walking through them to change them. So the whole notion or the whole idea that you don't have a choice, that you are like a puppet. Some people are going to go to heaven, some people are going to go to hell. Doesn't matter. You've already been selected. And some religious organizations do teach that. But in psychology, we wind up saying similar things like, because you grew up in an alcoholic family, because you've been physically abused as a child, therefore, because you go out and kill people and you go out and do all these bad things, you are not responsible. It is because of the way you were programmed. It's because of the way you were trained. And I remember we also look at a passage that says in Proverbs, if you raise up a child the way that he or she should go, that he will not depart from it. So I want you to be able to explain all of that. And at the end of your discussion, you're going to say, I do believe in determinism. I do believe in predestination. There's not much we can do, okay? Or you're going to say, I don't believe that because we all have free will. And because of that free will, God respects our free will, and he expects us to make daily choices to change our lives and to be like him. We are called to walk in the light as he is in the light. Passages like that says to us that God expects us to exercise our free will to make choices that are in our best interest. So those are, you can choose to reason that way, or you can choose to reason the other way. In other words, I grew up in a poor family. I learned to steal in order to survive, and hence I would always steal. I can't help it. My social environment has already determined who am I going to be. Genetically and socially, the way I was raised, this is how I'm going to be. There's not much I can do about it. So that's kind of how, I want you to see you kind of present your argument that way and then come to a conclusion. And if you believe that, man is helpless and there's not much he can do to change his life, he has already been programmed by the environment because of his genes, the genes that you have, because of the way you were socialized in your environment and the way you're raised in your family, there's not much you can do. Your personality is already set in concrete, as opposed to what the gospel is saying. The gospel is the power of God. Remember Romans 1:16? The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. In Psalms 19 verse 7, it says that the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. Romans 12 verses 1 and 2 says, don't be transformed by this world, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The scriptures are teaching that we can exercise our free will to make choices in our life on a daily basis. We're not just puppets. We're not just programmed like a computer is. So that's kind of where I expect you to do that. And when you do it, you're going to send me that paper via email. You have my email. Now, our sister, do you have a number? I have to call her. I have to find her number because she's not in the thing today, right? So let me see if I can get a hold of her. I think she did reach out to me at one point. Let me see, Sister Solis, right?
Yes, sir.
You happen to have a number?
No, I don't have her number.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any question at all?
So just explain in my own words about free, if I think we have free will, and
Exactly.
along with explaining what the what I think the verse is saying.
Right. And but also on some of these things we've discussed in terms of like, you know, remember we talked about Freud that says we are the product of our upbringing. We have all these things in us, and that's what it. So when a person commits a crime, you know, the lawyer may try to say, well, you know, he can't help it because he grew up in an alcoholic family, he grew up in an abusive family, and so on and so on. Remember we talked about the case where the wife killed her husband, and her defense was he was so abusive and there's nothing she could do, therefore she was fearful for her life, and that she wound up killing him.
Okay.
Right. So but the scriptures are saying that we do have free will and we can make the right decision.
So I heard you were explaining earlier, like when you're putting in the terms that to explain if I think we do have free will, or if our minds are set to do certain things based on how we grow up.
Right.
So in that case, I'm asking, so what if I should say we don't have free will and give an explanation?
No. If you say that we don't have free will and you are able to come up with a good argument, I can't say I'm not asking you to say what you think I believe. I want you to say what you believe. I just need you to prove it.
Oh.
Come up with an argument that to prove it. So that's kind of where it's at. So it's not about, you know, because you didn't give the right answer. This is something for you to project what you believe. All I'm asking is to give evidence to substantiate your view. Remember, I think it was every man should give an answer for that which they believe. Peter said that. So, you know, I mean, you could be wrong. You know, there are people who believe that there is no God, and they have substantial, you know, they come up with a lot of evidences to prove that there is no God. And there are those of us who believe that there is a God, and we come up with some. The sad thing is when we say we believe in God, but we can't prove it. We have no, you know, we can't defend it. That's a tragedy. I'm trying to find Sister Solis's number. I don't know what it is.
Normally she would come online, I don't know, like she's busy.
Huh?
Normally she would be at class, maybe she's busy or out somewhere or something.
Yeah, but when she comes on the site, is there a number that you normally see? How does she get in? Oh, she comes into Zoom.
She won't come in and just no number. But she has your number. I think she will get to you on your email. You can email her too. She always reads her email.
Okay.
If you're not getting her phone.
Okay, let me try to see her email, Sister Solis. Let me try to, because when we still have time to go, so let's give her a little more time. Okay, Sister. I think Solis, right? SOL. Let me see. Oh, there it is right here. Yeah, there it is. Okay. It says here, recorded lesson. Huh. It seems like she's always recording. So she may get this, right? Okay, let me see here. Let me try to send her. Come on. Reply. Okay, let me just do this. It's that was next week, right? Okay. So I'm just sending her this, see if she's gonna get it. Okay, I sent her an email. Hope she gets it. Oh, I should have asked her to call me. That's what I should have done. Okay, we just say call me. Okay. All right, I sent her that. Hopefully she'll respond to that. So basically, what are you doing for the holiday?
I'm going back home, sir.
You're going back home. So you have any preaching assignments, anything like that?
Like for exam?
No, you have any preaching assignment over the holidays at the local church that you'll be going back to?
No, they don't do that. I don't see they do that.
Well, you need to ask them. You need to, contact the minister and say, look, I'm going to be home on a holiday.
Oh, so you mean? Oh, I thought you mean like the school give us assignment, like.
No.
Oh, yeah, I normally preach and I go back, man. I don't have to.
Okay. Okay, good. So again, let's review what you are asked to do.
So
What you are asked to do is to defend whether or not you believe that we have free will, that we can exercise our free will to make daily choices that are going to be in our best interest, as opposed to the fact that there are those who argue that we've been wired genetically and therefore not much we can do to change that. So when you come genetically programmed and you're socialized in your environment, that is in your home with your parents and all of those things that you have accumulated over time, whether good or bad, do have an impact on the outcome of your life and the daily choices that you are going to make. Freud says that. The behaviorist also says that. So you have two things. You have the environment and you have your genes, your genes that tends to shape, for example, there are certain genetic illnesses that we know about that's passed on from one generation to another. We know, for example, that if a mother was an alcoholic and was drinking during the time of pregnancy, that the child may have some neurological damages and developmental damages as a result. So we know all of that stuff. The question really is, though, whether or not you have the choice to change the trajectory of your life, to change the direction of your life by exercising free will. The gospel is saying that no matter what you were socialized in, what you were yesterday, you can choose to be better today and as you go forward with your life. We have evidence of that. I gave you the passage, 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 11, that says, such were some of you. And in this catalog of these people, their life before they were converted, they were homosexual, they were thieves, they were all kinds of horrible things that they were practicing. But when they got a hold of Jesus and the application was made, they were able to change their life and to walk away from their old life and to adopt a new life with the aid of the Holy Spirit and the Word of God. Hence, that's why praying daily becomes important. That's why reading the scriptures daily becomes, and practicing what you preach. James says that faith without works is dead. That means you got to practice. Remember, we talked about habit, that over time, if you practice something, it becomes a habit, and sometimes habit becomes difficult to change. However, if you if you engage in daily praying, reading of God's word, and practicing what the content of the gospel, as James says, receive the implanted word, eventually you can change your life for the better. And hence, so that's kind of, if I was writing that paper, that's kind of how my approach would be. However, you may choose a different path. You may believe that Esau had no choice, even before he was born. You know, the die was cast. You may argue that Pharaoh was hardened, that Pharaoh didn't have a choice in his rebellion. The die was cast. The game was fixed. Okay. So Pharaoh was a walking duck, sitting duck, we would say in terms of the metaphor. You know, that's what it was. Okay. So you can choose that path, but you can choose to go down another road. All I'm asking is, whatever you choose, whatever your position, be able to defend it. And so, but I would expect you to say, you know, Freud teaches this. You know, you can do things like that. You know, you remember the statement I gave you? Let me try to go back to it. And I think we spent a lot of time on it, and it was which one is it? Let me see, where was it? Let me try to find it, because you need to remember that name. Okay. Let me see if I find it. Where is it? Come on now. Where is it? Where is it? Okay. You remember Aristotle? Remember we talked about him at great length? And the statement that I put in yellow, remember that? All men know that situations call for decision. In other words, Aristotle is saying, look, every situation is calling for you to exercise your free will to make the right choice. And notice Aristotle, that statement was made even before Christ was born. We're talking about, you know, he lived between 384 BC to 322 BC. So that's how old that statement is. And we spend maybe 3 classes talking about that statement. Okay? So you can reference that in your paper.
Yes, sir.
Let me see something else that you can reference in your paper. Where is it? Those are the passages, though, that we don't want to go back over those, but I want to go down to some names that you may want to reference. Remember John Locke? We talked a little bit about him. Remember what he says? A cause is that which makes any other thing begin to happen. In other words, John Locke is simply saying the car would never move unless the wind move it or somebody push it, okay, or somebody got in it and drive it. But if nothing, there is an agent that something must happen for that car to move. So when you walk, there's an energy, there's a force in you that's causing you to move. When you're dead, there's no, that's it, you're not going to move. Somebody have to move you. So that's the point he's making. So the argument here is that the behavior is governed or triggered by something else, something that's driving. If you come to be, for example, if you hate white people, it is because in the past you were taught by example, or whether someone taught you or whatever, therefore you come to dislike white people. Or whether or not you are a white person and now you hate Black people. The argument is you didn't just grow up in this world to hate. You have to be processed. You follow? Maybe you were raised in a home where your parents didn't like white people. or you were raised in a home where your parents didn't like Black people, and they behave a certain way, their behavior, their action, they talk about it, and eventually you learn and you practice the same behavior. That's the argument here.
Yes.
But the argument is, though, is at some point when you become an adult, can you now change that old program to where you can begin to love all people, irrespective of their race, their color, their class? You follow?
Yes, sir.
That's the gospel position. That's a gospel position. So you have a lot, you have a lot to write about. There's a lot of, a lot of source, a lot of information. And this last one, if you want to really understand Freud's position, that slide right there assumes that all behavior, including cognition, meaning the way you're thinking and the way you're feeling your emotions, are determined by antecedent, meaning things in the past. Okay? Antecedent means things in the past, the way you were raised, the way you were trained. For example, people in Jamaica drive on the left-hand side of the street. Where did that come from? Why do Jamaicans drive on the left-hand side of the street? What's the antecedent?
Huh?
Why do Jamaicans drive on the left-hand side of the street and not on the right-hand side of the street?
Yes, it's tradition from way back.
Where, how far back you can go to trace it? Where did it come from? What country? We know that, the British. See, they were colonized. Jamaica was colonized by the British. So any British country you go to, if you go to Hong Kong, they will be driving on the left because they were ruled by the British at one point. If you go, I have never been to Australia, but I suspect that if you go to Australia, that they will be driving on the left. I am not sure about, I know St. Vincent drive on the left because St. Vincent was colonized by the British. Jamaica was colonized by the British, so they drive on the left, okay? So that's what, when I talk about antecedent, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And Freud is simply saying that all of our behaviors are being powered by the way we were colonized or the way we were raised by our parents or society. Because, some people grew up in group home. So your caregiver, so you could be wider by saying your caregiver instead of your parents. Because some of us may not have had parents, but we may have, been socialized in a group home or in foster care or something like that. So that's Freud's position. And so have an idea of, of that. And maybe try to work that in the paper to show that at least you weren't asleep when we were talking about these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Okay.